If you are new to BJDs or just thinking about getting your first one, then you may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. These dolls are a big investment and the care they need is very different from that of an ordinary doll. If you don't look after them correctly, then they may start to go yellow or they may get damaged. So what are the absolute most important things you need to know to care for your new BJD? BJDs are made from resin and not from a traditional plastic. This changes not only the way they feel and their weight, but also has many implications for what we do with our doll. Most important to be aware of is that resin absorbs the oils that touch it, and that means that if we want to handle our doll, we need to be very aware of that. If we're handling her through her clothing and not touching her directly, then that shouldn't be a problem. But if you are going to be touching her skin in any way, then you will need to wear gloves. That protects her from the natural oils in your body. Make sure that the glove you're using is fresh and it hasn't been used in the sink or dishwashing, because otherwise it could have absorbed oils from the detergent or from those foods that you have been washing. The weight of your resin BJD, when you pick her up, you will notice that it is significant. And she's also going to be more breakable than a standard fashion doll. So that means that you are going to need to have a very stable and sturdy stand for her. If your resin BJD were to fall over, then it is very likely that you would break a finger or other parts, and that can be quite costly in terms of your investment. You should also make sure that your BJD is displayed as far away from natural light as possible. That may mean keeping her in a cabinet and keeping the curtains closed in the room. The reason for this is that resin does turn yellow with age. There isn't much you can do to stop this process except for keeping the doll away from sunlight, because sunlight is the primary thing that is going to cause that yellowing. When you're redressing your doll, remember again to wear your gloves, because you're very likely to end up touching her skin. If you've bought a fashion BJD, you're very likely to have received some little pieces that look rather like this. These items are specifically made for redressing, and they're going to replace your doll's hands. Simply put, we pull the doll's hand out, we take this hook off, and we replace it with the other piece. But what can happen if we just take that off is that you may lose the piece of elastic inside the doll's arm. And if you do that, the doll's arm will come off and it is quite challenging to restring her. So I recommend that you have a tool like this. This is going to be referred to as a hemostat or forceps, depending on where you buy it. It will clamp around the elastic and stop you from losing it inside the arm when you unhook the hand. Now with this piece attached, we can safely redress her into anything, including quite tight sleeves. And we do exactly the same thing to reverse the process. When you've had a doll for a long time, unfortunately, they may need restringing. What that means is that the elastic inside their body becomes a little bit too loose. If you lift your doll up and they are quite floppy, then this probably means that they're going to need to be restrung or have their elastics tightened. But often starting from scratch isn't necessary. All BJDs are made with an extra piece, which is the cap at the back of their head. This cap attaches with a magnetic piece which hooks onto the head, and it's usually quite simple to take off. Once you have opened the doll's head, you are going to see inside that there is some kind of ring or hook attached to elastic. If your doll's elastic is loose, then it's going to be quite easy to pull that elastic up and out by gripping that ring or hook that attaches to it. This doll's elastic is firm, so I don't need to do anything. But if this was loose, I could pull it up Again, use my hemostat to hold onto the elastic, and then I could retie it more tightly onto that hook. If your doll's skin gets any marks, either from touching it with your hands or from dirt, then unfortunately this can lead to long-term staining. And the way you clean it can also stain the doll inadvertently, because you may be accidentally putting oils onto her skin that will be absorbed and create those marks. The most useful tool that you can have for cleaning is one of these. It's most often referred to as magic eraser. These can be bought online or even just in the supermarket, as essentially it is just a piece of very firm foam, but it is slightly abrasive, and that's going to help you to clean the doll's skin. This can be used dry, direct on the skin, or dampened to shift harder stains. Generally, I will break off a small piece of the magic eraser. Most often, I will dampen it. If a mark is more severe and the magic eraser isn't taking it directly off, then you can add a little bit of rubbing alcohol to that. Treat it in exactly the same way, and this should help with more significant marks. Occasionally, even if you have a beautiful doll who already has a fantastic face up and painting, you are going to need to do touch-ups to her. If that's the case, the most important golden rule is to never use any products that contain oil. Acrylic paint is, of course, the best. Personally, when choosing paints, I prefer those made for model painting. They have a very good thin consistency, so you can do multiple layers and really build your colour. As well as paints, it's incredibly useful to have a set of pastels. Again, make sure that these are not oil pastels. These pastels can be ground and they can be brushed onto your doll with a soft paintbrush to add to the blushing and shading of different areas of the doll's skin. Most important of all, if you're changing the colour and adding paint to your doll, make sure that you have a good matte spray. This should go directly onto the doll's skin before and after any painting or any colour changes. Do note that these sprays are toxic, and you should make sure that you only use these outdoors in a well-ventilated area. They also need to dry after every coat, otherwise the doll's skin could become sticky. The product I'm holding here is called Mr. Super Clear and often referred to as MSC if you see that online. This is the UV cut version, which will help protect your paintwork from the sun. There are lots of other versions of matte spray that you may be able to buy in local hardware stores, but this will often be the one that is recommended online. If you are doing any shading and blushing to your BJD, do make sure never to use human makeup. This makeup contains oils, and again, oil is bad on resin and it will cause long-term staining.